Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to talk about one specific tool. So Chris talked about different types of tools, including tools and websites, and different types of technologies, including social media. I'm going to focus on civic engagement tools and ways in which civic engagement tools are used in plan-making processes. So I'm going to start with a quick, simple question. How many of you have had challenging experiences of public participation processes? Oh, wow. Okay, so it's about like 75% of you. All right. What about this? How many of you have experienced something like this, which is, all right, I don't need to explain that, about, again, 75%. What about this? How many of you have experienced something like this? Oh, all right. So about 50% of you. So public participatory processes are challenging. And it's not something new. We've been dealing with these types of challenges during the last 50 years or so. And during the last 10 years or maybe 15 years, we have talked a lot about the usefulness of online tools. So are online tools really useful for citizen engagement? How many of you believe that online tools are very useful for citizen engagement? Oh, great. It's why you're here. So I did a research. It's actually part of my PhD dissertation research that I've done at the University of Colorado, looking at the usability of online tools and ways in which planning organizations find these technologies useful. So do they find it useful? If they do, how? So I basically explored whether and how online participatory tools are useful and how we can use them effectively. I looked at three different cases, three different types of technologies, including MindMixer, Place to Speak, and Shared Abouts. This is MindMixer. You probably know about MindMixer. As you see, people can sign up, citizens can sign up to be able to participate, and then they can share their ideas, say that, hey, this is what I like about, for example, this scenario, or this is what I don't like, or, for example, support some of the specific ideas that is uploaded there. And also cities can introduce their projects, or saying that who is listening to their ideas, or who's here, who is the planning team, and provide some type of information about the whole planning project as well. Place to Speak has a kind of similar structure. There are some differences between these types of technologies. I'm not going to look at the differences here in this presentation. I'm going to look at the effectiveness of the tools in general. But again, it's interactive. People can sign up and participate in online discussions. Shareabouts is a little bit different. Shareabouts is geotag and it's map-based, so people can locate a location. For example, say that this is the location that I would like to have a bike share station, and they can explain why they think it's a good location, and other people can share their ideas as well. So it's kind of interactive, but it's more location-based. So in this research, I did a survey. I surveyed more than 121 planners, and it was web-based surveys. And also I did phone interviews. 40 planners participated in phone interviews as well. Well, I wish Obama was a planner as well, but no. So 40 planners participated in phone interviews as well. And as you can imagine, organizations have used these types of technologies for a variety of purposes in different types of plans. They used it in community development plans, or transportation planning projects, land use planning, economic development, or environmental planning projects, in different types of planning projects at different scales, including local or neighborhood scales, downtown revitalization plans, or regional transportation plans. So planners have used these technologies in different types of plans at different scales. And they used it to increase the number and diversity of participants, to inform citizens about plan issues and consensus building. And I'm going to talk about consensus building part a little bit because that's very important. They use both online methods and non-online methods. More than 90% of planning organizations used both online methods and non-online methods. So they did not only rely on online technologies. They relied on two types of methods. And also to recruit participants, they used, again, both online and non-online methods. For example, they introduced the tool in their public meetings and also through their weblogs or through their Facebook page. So they used different types of methods to introduce their tool as well. They did not make major changes. About 84% of organizations said that they did not need to hire new person to take care of data analysis, or they did not need to make, for example, to create a new department. Most of them used the tools and technologies based on what they had. So they didn't make major changes. Did they find the information useful, the information that they were getting through these types of technologies? Kind of. About 55% find the information useful, but about like half of them were saying that what they are getting is very similar to what they are getting from other sources. So the information that they're getting through these types of technologies was kind of similar to the information that they were getting from, for example, their public meetings in half of the cases, or through their interviews. But about 90% of these guys were extremely happy with using these technologies. So why? Why planners were so happy about use of these technologies? If it's not about getting input, if it's like half of them are very excited about the input that they are getting, why like 90% of them so excited about using the tool? So I did regression analysis and statistical analysis, and I'm not going to talk about these statistics here. Let's dive into the juicy part. So one of the reasons that I like using about these technologies was about being able to build trust. So they were saying that the tool was useful for them because they were able to show that we are transparent, we want to hear your ideas, we want to include different voices. So it helped them to build trust within the community. In 1/3 of the cases, it was also helpful to make the whole participatory process less time consuming. Not in all the cases, in 1/3 of the cases. And as I said, in about half of the cases, it was used to get new information, which is different from the information they were getting from other methods. But in 75%, they were so happy because they were saying that it was useful for consensus building. It was useful for us to come to a kind of understanding that what people want. So for example, planners use these types of tools for scenario planning purposes. They were creating scenarios using different types of methods, for example, other GIS methods to create scenarios, but then they were uploading scenarios online and seeing how different people react to it. So for example, if like 1,000 people like scenario 1 or like just 50 people like scenario 2, it was easier for them to reach a kind of consensus among the team of planners to decide, okay, so yes, maybe scenario two or scenario 1 is more popular, or maybe it's the one that we are going to look at. So it was easier for them to make decisions because they were getting a lot of information from a large number of people. In about 47% of the cases, planners believe that it helped with project approval. And I'm not going to talk about ethical parts or anything like that here. I'm just providing the information that I got from the survey and based on the analysis. So briefly, it helped with attracting people and building trust. It made participatory processes less time consuming, generating new information, helped with building consensus, influencing the project approval. But hey, is that all? So just 1/3 of people were saying that it helps with making the whole process less time consuming. But what about the rest of them? As you see, there are there are different experiences in terms of using these types of technologies. Some people were finding it useful for finding, for example, new information. Some people were finding it more useful for consensus building. So planners had different ideas in terms of how these technologies are useful, or if they are useful. So how we should choose these tools? There are tons and tons of technologies right now out there, and I'm living in Berkeley. It's in Silicon Valley. You see like these technologies are just building every day. It's huge, and it's growing so fast, and it's very hard to keep up with that. Really, it's so hard. So, what are the considerations? What are the things that we need to think about when we want to decide about choosing these types of technologies? One of these considerations is that organizational capacity. Do we have the organizational capacity of, for example, analyzing GIS data that we are collecting? If we do not have that capacity, maybe it's better not to use a geospatial type of tool. Maybe it's better to use another type of tool. So organizational capacity is one of them. There are legal issues as well that we need to be aware of. So in 24% of the cases, planners were saying that we have some kind of legal issue here. For example, they had privacy issues in terms of using these types of technologies. For example, they had privacy issues in terms of incorporating information that they are getting from people into their plans, and for example, mentioning that this person said this or this person said that. So there are some, for example, privacy issues in terms of using these technologies, and these are important when we want to think about using these technologies or choosing between them. Equity issues. There are a lot of equity issues. We have talked about equity issues in this conference and earlier conferences a lot. I was teaching this course, Technicity. It's one of the online courses. It's free. How many of you have taken Technicity or know about this? All right, so very few. It's an online course. And in that course, one of my students mentioned an interesting word. They call it tequity issues. So we are dealing with tequity issues, which is not only about having access to internet or technology. It's about technology literacy as well. So for example, some of these tools are very, very complicated. Is it okay for our community or citizens to work with that type of technology? Or some of these tools are maybe probably simple, or maybe it's better to use those types of technologies for a particular community. Of course, we need to integrate both online and both online and offline methods. And in more than 90% of the cases that I studied, which are about 60 different organizations in the US and Canada, they did that. They incorporated both online and offline participatory methods. What about the important one? It's about the context. So here we're not talking about technology really. We're talking about the context of plan-making environment. So tool capacity or the type of tool is important when we want to decide which type of tool we want to work with. But there are other factors that are probably even more important. Organizational capacity and community capacity in terms of using these types of technologies. If our organizations if our organization does not have the capacity of using that technology, maybe it's better not to use that. Or if that community does not have the capacity of understanding that technology, maybe it's better to choose other methods. My whole point is that, well, technology is great, but just maybe it's better not rush into using technology. Thinking about these three factors when we want to decide about particular technologies to use. Thank you very much.